to BAM Studio, where Bloomberg Business Week sit down with policymakers, business owners, and investors on the sidelines of the Vietnam Future Economic Summit 2025. So today's topic is the future starts today. So our next esteemed guest is Ben Gray. Ben Gray, could you please introduce yourself?
Thank you very much for having me. Ben Gray from Knight Frank, one of the founding partners over here, and we've been in market for 3 years with this particular entity.
Where do you see the ultra high net worth individuals in Vietnam investing right now? What is a trend that you and Knight Frank are observing?
It's a very interesting question. There is quite limited data in terms of where the ultra high net worths and high net worths to that extent are actually sort of allocating their capital. So a lot of it is done by field. Real estate's a key part of that. What we do know is that there's close to 2027, we're going to be looking at, I think it's what we call personal financial assets under management for individuals. We're pushing $600 billion US. That's had a growth since 2022 of nearly 10-11% per year. So we're seeing a significant growth of wealth here that's privately held by individuals that now needs to be put to good work.
Yes.
So the question is, where do they put it? Well, traditionally in Vietnam, gold, real estate, and these days crypto, plus the public markets as well. We still find that real estate is taking up around 25-30% of people's personal allocations into products. And most of those groups or guys and girls seem to be targeting residential. And that part of the market, which I think is a two-lane market. Residential market is very different to commercial market. Residential market is still quite easy to get into. We have seen some significant growth in terms of values over the last 10 years, very significant growth in terms of values. We've got some constraints there in terms of the supply side. So there is a reasonable expectations we'll continue to see capital appreciation in the short to medium term. But that is probably where we're seeing the capital going.
Right. So still majority, as you say, 30% in real estate.
Yeah.
Do you see that changing, or that trend changing, or the allocation of 30% into real estate changing, given the fact that maybe people are thinking more about the other asset classes?
Sure.
And recently we hear news that the government is even thinking about taxing your second home or third homes. So do you see that trend changing? That's
going to be quite interesting. So the second home tax, I'm actually quite a booster for, because it tries to come down on quite a lot of the speculation. In terms of ultra high net worths, we're not talking about the sort of mid-market $250,000 two-bedroom apartments. We're talking about significant landed properties or indirect allocations where they're going into either partners, friends, projects, etc., where they can then start to drive sort of higher returns than you would get from straightforward holding residential real estate. In terms of the alternative asset classes for them, we'll park gold over here for a minute because it's a very strange part of the market. I think the listed space is very interesting. The upgrade to FTSE Russell has given more clarity and liquidity into the market, as we've seen already. Yeah. We've seen it pop quite dramatically in the last 6 months. The improved regulations and the changes to legislation allowing sort of more sophisticated investors to come through and be able to see through and get a better feel for our market is very good. And the Resolution 68 that's been talked about quite a lot today in terms of the drive now to improve the private sector and to step that up is giving more alternatives for groups to come through.
Right. That sounds like maybe people are getting more education about the real estate, and
they are. They very much are. And a key bit of this as well is actually remittances back into Vietnam. So the quantum of capital coming back in now from the changes in regulations to allow Viet Q now to buy property, for example, is quite significant. So we're now looking at, I think it was around $19 billion US last year, of which half of that was actually coming straight into Saigon.
Oh, wow.
So those foreign guys and girls coming back into country now are coming in for a reason. They do believe again in the fundamentals of the country and the growth story. And by sort of stepping up and allowing very simple Viet Qs to buy real estate, you've already opened the floodgates up to further investment to our sector.
So you mentioned a very interesting data. And if you don't mind me asking, what is sort of the proportion of clients that are coming from the from internationally and putting the remittances to work in real estate versus the local investors thinking about buying the real estates for Knight Frank?
Okay, so there's a couple of challenges on this to actually get the data sets through. So again, you're looking mainly at residential. For us, I'd suggest it's probably around about a 40-60 split in favor of foreign to local. We're still very much driven here by the good, strong local developers and investors. But when we're stepping away from sort of individuals and where they're putting their money and looking to the overarching real estate environment, then most of our work is targeted towards the local platforms and funds in the real estate space, and they tend to be foreign invested. So groups
Right.
from overseas are coming through, invested into.
Where is this money being put to work? What is the next trend? Given that we see, for example, COVID has transformed working remotely.
Sure.
Right? You see that offices prices in, let's say, the United States fallen dramatically over the last 15 years because of COVID. And also, we see that the increasing supply chain shift so that there's higher demand for logistic real estate in Vietnam, industrial parks also. So where do Knight Frank and yourself see which sector of the real estate is going to be driving the next cycle in Vietnam?
I'll go backwards on that. So the key driver for the next 5 years plus, and then undoubtedly a bit further out on that as well, is industrial. It's industrial, it's manufacturing, logistics, supply chain. China plus one's a very real thing. We are very much gearing towards another wave of investors coming through. It's still quite a nascent part of the real estate market here, in as much that we're still on the first wave of institutional fund style investing into the space. We've not really seen any exits yet. We're now getting to the point, because of the COVID delays, where funds are coming up against their 5+2s, for example.
Yeah.
And there's now a real interest in seeing how they can exit out from their existing holdings and then recycle that capital back into constructing, stabilizing, and then getting back out the real estate space. Office is a very interesting part. We haven't got enough of it down in the south. We've got a bit too much up in the north. COVID did have a massive impact on the tier one markets with work from home. However, we didn't really see that effect over here. Headcount stayed very, very high, and there was very much a drive to get back into the office as soon as it opened up. Predominantly driven by a sort of core fundamental of our general worker bees, our guys and girls in the office. You know, they tend to want to be in the office. They tend to be at the younger level still living with families or still living in quite small accommodation. So they like to be able to come into that sort of dynamic environment that the offices are. So we haven't had that same challenges that New York's had, London's had, Paris has had, etc. And it's a bit more sort of stabilized over here. But we do need a bit more to be built in the south and a bit less in the north for a bit of an oversupply situation. But the main driver is industrial.
Industrial.
Yeah.
Okay. So we mentioned many of the key important events that happened in 2025. For example, the upgrades of the FTSE, of the public markets. One of the key things that may be getting mentioned less frequently is that the mergers of provinces from 62, now we only have 32 provinces. And the infrastructure being built around that, fiscal spending has been great. How does that impact your business, Ben?
Okay, so conceptually, it's fantastic.
Yeah.
That merger happened, as you know, very, very quickly. And part and parcel of when you have any kind of M&A, basically, and you're trying to jam two things together, is there has to be a period where it settles in. So conceptually, what we're looking forward to, and we do have to wait to see this happen, is a streamlining of permitting and approvals to allow for these major projects to go ahead. Be that a industrial park being constructed adjacent to the infrastructure that's been improved. So we're having to promote to the market this is a very, very good thing, but we're still adopting a bit of a wait and see approach to see how it falls out. And that will be coming clear, we expect, over the next 4 to 5 months, especially when everything starts to settle up in the north, Hanoi, the National Assembly, etc.
What are the risks and what are the challenges that you have been facing when you manage your business here?
Well, the biggest challenge in the last year has obviously been the Liberation Day or Independence Day, a hard stop in the market for quite a period of time. We did find a very quick recovery on that, which is good. I think the biggest challenge we've got over here comes down to the very granular fact that the land title is based on a land lease system, a land use rights certificate. And currently what we're very keen to understand and see some precedent is how these will be extended. So in the south, where we had the grants of these titles in the mid-90s, most of those on 30-year leases, we're starting to see a couple of projects now come up against the hard expiries. And we're watching those with quite a lot of interest to find out how they'll be extended and what the kind of current rough cut methodology to do that, how it's actually going to fold out. So investors coming through, they're now getting particularly uncomfortable with land titles that are below sort of around 25 to 30 odd years, because we don't know what's going to happen next. That's our biggest concern in terms of the real estate space, is how they will start to manage these expiries and how that will then fold back into the market and allow our investors to have more confidence when they come and put capital to work.
And on top of that, is the trend in the West currently, i.e. people getting married a little bit later, people owning homes a little bit later in their lives?
Yep.
Has that come to Vietnam, and does that affect your business at all?
No, I think we're a bit behind that curve, quite a bit behind that curve at the moment. Yes, we We are in a position over here where the demographic bubble's having its run, and we're starting to hit up to this burgeoning middle class that's getting bigger and bigger and bigger. But I wouldn't suggest that we're in a position like we are in Europe, where the cost of living crisis has bitten so hard that people are being forced now to step back from buying their first homes. They have to put off major life decisions such as marriage, children, etc., etc. Not quite in that position yet.
No.
We always has to be carefully monitored that the basic prices of accommodation, housing, etc., don't accelerate out beyond what people can actually afford in the market. So that's something that the government has to be very careful about. They're very aware of it. They're keeping an eye on the supply side. And part and parcel of the new changes with the amalgamation of the provinces, etc., is to allow developers to come through and be able to actually construct. That's been the biggest bottleneck on our supply side is permitting.
Right. Interesting. Now, if I remember my first guest today, he was from HSBC, and he talked about the increasing need to diversify eligible investors so that diversify their wealth globally. Would you maybe share a little bit about the difference between the two residential real estate market, London versus Ho Chi Minh, for example?
Fundamental difference is freehold title if you're a foreigner or not. I think the transparency in the London market is very, very clear. It's very, very, very mature. It's been going for a very, very long time.
Very long time.
Significant difference in ticket sizes. I'd suggest that the quality of our new product that's coming into market in Vietnam now is getting pretty, pretty good. But legacy, going back 10 plus years, it was challenging to find decent things you could invest into. London still has a perception of being a global financial hub. So there's a big challenges now with tax coming through in the UK, which we're very aware of, non-doms, etc. But I think that if you had £20 million to invest and you had to toss up between coming into Saigon or Hanoi or looking into London, and you were international capital without any restrictions on where you can go, you would probably most certainly look towards London or another tier one market. The ability to move in, transact cleanly with a very liquid market is there, very much there.
Okay. And has ESG come into play at all in terms of investing in the real estate market in Vietnam?
It's now becoming very, very important in the commercial space, incredibly important. That's driven by the large commercial occupiers across industrial, retail, and office. It is now part of their requirements when they come through to target, say, the LEED Gold accredited or Platinum accredited office buildings. Wellness on top of that is very, very important. For individual investors in Vietnam, again, if we're just concentrating on the high net worth individuals here, not so much. Where we're starting to see the education of folks, guys and girls around the space, is the understanding that these buildings have greater longevity. So in principle, you start to see a premium being paid by the occupiers coming through. And in principle, because the constructions are such high quality, you should have a longer life of building, which means conceptually it's a good thing to invest.
Yeah.
There's the premium on that is not really qualifiable at the moment in this market.
Right, okay.
But certainly in a tier one market, it is.
Yeah. Now, we talk a lot about ultra high net worth individuals.
Yep.
Ben, if you do not mind me picking up your brain about maybe the youngsters, the younger generations of Vietnam, the ones who just finished university and get into the job market and maybe thinking about buying their first homes and their fear of AI replacing their jobs. What would be your advice for them thinking about the real estate market?
Look, big benefit we've got over here is that the folks coming out of universities here are very highly educated, very skilled, very, very dynamic. Depending where they're working, yes, AI is going to have an impact. In my particular part of the business, it's going to be impacting us on our speed and ability to carry out research, to put together some more complicated financial models. But it still comes down to being a personable business. You know, our job is to talk, meet, interact, persuade, marionette people to the best of our ability to have deals done. So I'd be suggesting to young folks coming back in again, then, you know, embrace the AI revolution, understand what your particular market sector and what your job is going to be impacted by it. And you're in a great part of the world to benefit from the growth story of Vietnam going forward. So come in, come back, start your first job. Cost of living is very low here. Cost of real estate for residential is still relatively low. And get yourselves on that ladder.
Right. I know that asking you horrible question was a good move because you answered them really, really well. Ben, thank you so much for your time.